So to start with, I'd like to kind of step back completely and compare the human being to the machine. So when you compare that to kind of human beings, I think it's staggering, and we haven't really, to my mind, kind of understood all the capabilities that we've got. And I think that's very important for usability for everyone, and accessibility for people with disabilities as well. So we look at usage. We can now take these devices and use them pretty much anywhere. The devices can now see. And that presents loads of opportunities with QR codes, and they've become part of the payment kind of usability. So all of these things help us in our everyday lives, and they help everyone. So what? We've been really focused on the beginning parts of the timeline that I talked about earlier. The web was invented, we created these various different websites, we focused on keyboard and mouse as the primary input method. And that's kind of where our technology has been kind of anchored and how we've thought about things. We've also been, from a technology point of view, really been dominated in our thinking in personal computing by Microsoft and Apple to a certain extent. And really it's only been in the last few years we've started to get more browsers that we need to think about as well. And they all have different capabilities and different things that we need to think about. So why is this a problem? Well, let's take a website that's been designed for this big screen and keyboard and mouse experience. But as soon as I then access that website on a small screen device, it's harder to use, if not impossible. But if we take a smartphone for a minute, the first thing I see is something that's heavily zoomed out. I'm just having so much content thrown at me in a way that I can't take in. Just from an accessibility, usability point of view, I can't kind of access that content. So I then need to use some pinch and zoom, and I can kind of scroll around and look at part of the screen. And that's worked quite well-ish, but it's a kludge. It's a factor of the fact that these devices came out, and there needed to be a way of accessing the content that was there already. Otherwise, who would create the content? It was like the chicken and the egg. And things are changing. Actually, in some cases, quite quickly. So because we access this sort of 450 million devices and we get all this data, we do a little bit of analysis on this. So we can see that the technology landscape is really changing over the last year. Microsoft's dominance in the browser space has really started to drop off. Google started to come up. But there is also a battle for the kind of third or fourth kind of mobile ecosystem as well, and that presents challenges as well from accessibility, because Richard was showing Apple, and they're more advanced, whereas the others perhaps haven't invested in that. Now, if we suddenly saw a big shift in this, that becomes more important when we look at our strategies. Hardware vendors, really big difference, even just across Europe. So we can see that France, Germany, and Italy, relatively similar in terms of their kind of device penetration. But then you look at the United Kingdom, where BlackBerry is really important. If we look at screen sizes, this is just a list of the top 5 screen sizes that we're seeing. The 3.5 inches is important, and then you've got other ones around that particular, within what you might call an acceptable range to sort of consider the same. But the 9.7 inch is becoming very important on the tablet devices as well. And that difference in screen real estate can really make a difference to what we can do from an accessibility point of view. We could present bigger text that's more readable on a larger screen, whereas we might take a different approach on a smaller screen. So looking at the considerations, I just want to pick on 3 of the sites that we've that use 51 degrees and we've had some experience of, to look at how accessibility or usability is varied across the different platforms. So here we've got Galaxy. Their whole website, certainly to us, appears to be focused to get information about the people who are eating their chocolate bars. And they do that by putting a code inside the wrapper, and then you go to the website and you type the code in, and then they ask you for a bit of information about yourself, like an email address or something like that, in case you've won the competition. So it's really primarily about developing a relationship with someone that we wouldn't otherwise have a direct relationship with. And what they've done, it's just such a simple site, is take away all the fluff around the site on the mobile device and just focus on the primary part of the transaction, because they've kind of been able to differentiate what's important and what's not important. If I take Subway, what they do is have this very generic website that's promoting offers and health and all this kind of stuff. But if you access it on the mobile phone, the main thing is what's the menu and where's my nearest Subway. And Prime Location, on their main website, a lot of editorial and things like that. You access this on a mobile device, it's taking you straight to the main reason that someone's come to that website, which is to find out about property in their local area. Yeah? And there's lots of other websites we can talk about later, and all of them, to a greater or lesser extent, have thought about the context of the user and how to present a process and the information and the user experience in a way that's suitable to that context and that particular type of device. So it's not a kind of million miles away to then say, okay, now let's look at the profile of the individual and what are their capabilities and what do we now need to do differently if we now know what the individual is capable of. So let's look at some possibilities. So the first one really around authentication. We put this barrier in the way generally when authenticating, by asking someone to enter their email address or a username and a password. Yeah, and that's been kind of accepted as the way of authenticating people on websites, and it's quite clunky, particularly clunky on a small screen device where you've got a little keyboard and big fingers, and it's difficult enough as it is. But we've now got these devices that can see. We've seen the authentication coming in for unlocking the phone. What if we could actually extend that into other authentication transactions? There's also payment. So the devices now are starting to have all this payment information built into them. They know about your bank details, they know about your credit cards, etc. That's built into them. So a payment transaction, particularly on an e-commerce environment, could be significantly simplified if all that information is already present. And finally, there's location. So the devices, all devices really have now become location aware to a greater or lesser extent. So the experience we present to someone when they're sitting at home accessing our services is going to be different to when they're out and about shopping. So I'd just like to look at a kind of recent announcement about how these 3 things can come together. So Square is a payment service that was created by Jack Dorsey, who's the guy who founded Twitter, and it's really revolutionizing payments, particularly in the US. What it allows a merchant to do is they plug a little reader into the top of their iPhone, and then it would allow you to swipe a credit card. So why is that important? Well, it takes away the data entry side of things, because you can just do the mag stripe, and it's been packaged in a really compelling way for merchants. And what they've done is really take this to the next level, because they have things like when you register for it, there's a picture of you that gets part of that registration process, and that's really important in a minute. So worth having a look at Square if you're interested in payments. Really some driving innovation, I would say, at the moment. And they've teamed up with Starbucks. And what this proposition allows you to do is, if you register for it, you walk into Starbucks. The Starbucks you've got your phone on you, Starbucks knows you're there. It goes, oh, one of our customers has just walked in, and they're already registered. You walk up to the till. The till shows the operator a picture of you, and it remembers what your regular coffee is. And you say, I'll just have the usual, please. Yeah, and they say, yeah, that's fine, coming up. And the payment's been taken automatically. Yeah, so there's no tapping of things, there's no waving of things around or anything like that. That's the kind of new experience. So from a usability point of view, they've integrated location, authentication, really going back, hundreds of years, I suppose, when we just authenticated each other by knowing who we were. And you walked into a shop and someone said, yeah, you've got a tab, we'll add it to your tab. And the payment side of things as well. So from a usability perspective for all of us, that's a massive step forward if we want to opt in and transact in that particular way. But also, doesn't that have a huge amount of advantage from an accessibility perspective as well? So looking to the near future, don't really think we've kind of got our heads around what the impact of the big screen TV is going to be. Yeah. So what we can say is, well, actually, if you hold up a smartphone next to a big screen TV at a standard viewing distance, they're pretty much the same size. So the text that you would present on each device would be the same. But most TVs, when you access the web, don't have some sort of TV optimized experience. It's a desktop web that's designed for when you're sitting kind of that far away from the screen, and that's not the case in a TV environment. And also, we don't have giant hands that allow us to kind of reach across the room to touch the screen. So it seems logical that kind of waving at the TV and talking to the TV are also going to be part of the experience as well in the future. Again, for everyone, but what a lot of benefit that's going to have from an accessibility point of view if we suddenly have websites that we can talk to and navigate via, simply by talking to them. And that is the mainstream experience that has been created in the website. It's not something that's been added on top to meet accessibility legislation. If we go to the future beyond that, well, Robbie the robot, really how long until we can actually have a semi-intelligent conversation with a computer, and actually we start having our kind of information and computer interaction not happening via our eyes, but we start happening via ears and mouth, and we can start to create an experience that's as good in terms of accessing that information. So to summarise, I come at this from several different angles. Accessible design is really the key objective. So understand the context of the transaction, the interaction that's taking place. And then optimize that process. And then optimize the opportunity as well for you. And then what do we need in order to enable this? Well, we need our information to be managed and stored in a way that can be deployed in all these different medium. Business intelligence is, I just think, absolutely king. Capturing as much as you can about what the user wants, what they're doing, what they've done in the past, is going to be a key driver. Establish a sort of technology profile. If your service is being consumed in a developing country, then there's going to be a very different technology profile to, say, here in the UK. Authentication. I just think that's kind of a huge opportunity. We've already seen a lot of websites now integrate with Facebook and Twitter, so you can log in kind of using their accounts. But the whole authentication kind of model is going to end up being turned on its head. And payment, if you need to accept payment from people, there's just a wealth of new kind of ways of doing that in a simpler and easier way.